This program might contain strong language. If you think you may be offended, switch off now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watch Mojo and the Inside Podcast. Today, we are coming at you with another edition of Inside the Montreal Expos. I'm your host, Rob. With me is Watch Mojo's CEO and co-founder, Ashkan. What's going on, Ash? You've stirred up quite the buzz in our town over the past couple of days.
It's like every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. So I mean, you know, when we were discussing the Netflix documentary, Who Killed the Montreal Expos, for many, it stirred up a lot of emotions. And for me, I was somewhat surprisingly calm. I was like, okay, it's a chapter of the city's history. And the only thing I thought was, I go, you know, if you've heard the story that, you know, I became an entrepreneur when in 2004, I realized that I'm helpless and can't have an impact. It's true. I've said it many, many times. So I just was like, you know, if I was in the position I'm in today, again, I'm a nobody in the grand scheme of things, but I'm better position than I was 20 years ago. I'm like, you know, would you have done something? And I was like, well, it's moot because there's nothing to do, right? And then I just out of curiosity, I was like, you know, whatever happened to that idea of Major League Baseball splitting the Tampa Bay Devil Rays season in 2 locations, which I don't think is an optimal idea, to put it mildly. And again, I just kind of moved on. I was like, yeah, you know, there's nothing to do. But then it's funny that last week, just Saturday, I was watching my beloved Montreal Canadiens versus the Colorado Avalanche. And the Avalanche 30 years ago moved from Quebec City, the Nordique du Québec, and they moved to Colorado. And I don't really like the jerseys that it's like as if your girlfriend, you know, sleeps with her new boyfriend, and your ex-girlfriend sleeps with her new boyfriend, records it and sends you the link. You know, it's just like an added stab wound. But yeah, I get why the Avs do it, sell more jerseys. But if you're a resident of La Ville de Quebec, it can't be too fun. But anyway, and I was like, you know what? I had emailed the usual suspects, individuals and organizations that you would think would lean in to take a look at bringing back the Expos, and we could discuss if that's smart or not. And I was like, okay, you know, it's not really up to me. There's other people who are better positioned. Ultimately, I don't have billions of dollars, you know. So, but as I was watching it, I guess at some point, I sent off an email to a gentleman named Elias Makos, who today hosts a show on CJD, which is a Bell Media radio station. But at the time, he was the PR rep for the Expos. So I was like, hey, I just had a question. I don't even know what the question was. But I go like, what, you know, why did this happen? Or what do you think of that? And he said, hey, you know, if there's anything I could do to be helpful, let me know. And I was like, yeah, there is something you could do. I go, I know, and again, I'm very transparent. I told you, you know, we've discussed it, how in the last year, we've had a lot of media companies and investor groups who always reach out to look at, you know, could WatchMojo be the way that they make up for not having built an exposure on YouTube? And those groups, as we kind of look at who's the best fit, some of them want us to do more of the same. Others want us to really think big. But even when you say think big, you're like, how big? You know, thinking big could be, let's go buy something. Thinking big could be, let's go in like live entertainment. But some of them, when I look at their websites, their investor profile, they're actually set up to invest in sports, media, entertainment, you know, opportunities. And with those, I would sometimes go like, would you be interested in a sports club? And I swear on anything near and dear to me, the first time I asked that question, I was talking about, you know, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever, lacrosse. It was just more generic. And that's customary, right? Like sometimes entrepreneur in residences go and, you know, hang their hat at these firms to bring them opportunities. But I'd spoken to one in particular, and I'd spoken to one individual that I knew pretty well because I knew he'd take me seriously. And I was like, look, if the Expos, there was an opportunity with Major League Baseball, would you take a look? And he was like, yeah. He's like, we don't really have a link to Montreal. Like, we don't have an office there. None of us want to have to kind of come there if there's a problem. Like with any opportunity, not with baseball. Yeah. But they're like, you're there. And that's usually why sometimes we invest in a company and it's set up in Stuttgart because that's just where the founder was, you know? And so I asked Elias, I said, would you mind sharing a poll that would allow me in this exploratory process? Like, again, we're not submitting a proposal. Like, this sounds crazy if I were to say that. And I'm pretty sure the league wouldn't want that. But I was like, as we're doing this exploratory process, it's just due diligence, same way like an investor does due diligence. I'm like, what about the fan base? And then I was also curious about media support. And Elias delivered. I mean, Elias posted it, and I wrote the article that explained the rationale, and we could talk about it in both languages, English and French, because I do think that's what makes Montreal unique, and that's what makes, if not to speak, by the way, if I ever say something about MLB, I'm not speaking on their behalf. I'm just speculating. Like if MLB were to lean into Montreal, I think they would view the French language actually as a plus.
Yeah.
In the city, a lot of people are always using la langue française as like, this bad thing. And you know me, it's always turned seemingly weaknesses and threats into opportunities and strengths.
Yep.
Elias was like, sure, I'll do it in a couple of days. And I was like, okay, maybe he won't. And I went on my merry ways. And, again, I have a job. I have like so much to do. J'ai d'autres chats à fouetter, as we say in French. But then when he posted it, my Twitter blew up. And, I post stuff. Nobody reads it, which is fine. I've said it. It's my own diary. It's to go back. Like, I don't post for people. I know it sounds weird. It's a very good reference for myself.
Yeah.
But then I got like 2,000 plus English responses. And then I got 1,000 French responses. And, sure, you could say, well, you're asking a biased pro baseball team, pro Montreal, Expos audience. But that's who I'm asking. I'm not going to ask somebody that hates the sport. And then it was everything went haywire, It was like every journalist, and, I've joked that nowadays, like back in the day, people called you, or for the first part of my career, people emailed you. I was getting Facebook requests. I was getting LinkedIn, X. I'm sure somebody put up a Expos bat signal that I missed.
Every which way.
Yeah, and partly because, again, I like to be available, and I'm like, my statement of purpose in life is here to serve. I wasn't going to be like snobbish and like ignore people to create like aura, so I just was like, said yes. And I just said yes to everybody. And, the last 36, I haven't eaten like in 2 days maybe, but
You've
like
been on a media rampage.
It's been crazy, and so, yeah, and it's been really, really informative because I've also had a lot of people who are more knowledgeable than me. And it's kind of fitting that now we close out this week, let's say, with this podcast. So here we are. And fan interest is there. And we could talk about the business model. Who gets where do you get the money, Ash? Are you 12,000 there, or are you a billionaire? And the answer is somewhere in between. But let's start off. I don't have 3 billion or 2 billion or whatever, but the money is not the obstacle, I think, was really the message that resonated.
Well, that's the thing a lot of people seem to point to first as the biggest obstacle, because I think it's just the most obvious thing for a lot of people, but you say otherwise. So what, in your mind, what is the biggest obstacle, if not the financial aspect?
Full stop. Major League Baseball, do they want a team in Montreal? And my purpose, and I sent them, I think, I'll be honest, I sent them one message, and then after the survey, I sent them another message, and I may not follow up and leave them alone. I mean, ideally, they would just give me like a wink or a nudge or thumbs up, thumbs down to say, whatever. But so the money is not the issue. We'll talk about that. The issue is Major League Baseball wanting a team in Montreal. They are 30 teams now. It would make sense for them to be 32. I concede in my own exploratory process, which is why I'm public, not at all to cause distraction or be a nuisance. That's how I learn, right? Like I built WatchMojo by asking questions, by writing about it. It's the same playbook. You have to educate yourself. So, next year there will unfortunately possibly be a labor stoppage. And it's ironic. We talked about the 94 strike and how that 74 and 40, I want to say, or 70 and anyway. The Expos were the best team in Major League Baseball, even better than the Yankees. Went to a couple games there. I remember one game against the Braves. It was like 45 or 62,000. It was massive. It was just the loudest I'd seen that place. So there might be a labor stoppage, and then they're going to renegotiate the TV rights the ensuing year. And then they're going to look at expansion, say 2030. And unfortunately, again, as much as I'm always willing to offer my help, I think that will be too late for the city. And here in Montreal, it's like, yeah, it could be bureaucratic, it could be red tape. But again, I think if you sequence things properly, things get done. You got to be, I criticize Montreal because I want it to be better, criticize everything, but it's also a great place. And if you, in my first article, you saw I compared skylines as an anecdote. I was like, look at when you look at that so-called Labatt Park, the images in 2020, there was like 2 buildings, in the back, skyscrapers. If you kind of now, when you drive on our new Pont Champlain, another example, we get stuff done. Like, let's also take a moment to look at the good. When you come on Pont Champlain, let's say if you're coming from New York or you're coming from, you see the skyline. I don't think that's the view from the bridge, but that's the point. It's look at how many more buildings there are, and there's been a lot of development, but there's not been a stadium because nobody expects there to be a need. And I'm here to say it can be done. And I guess we'll talk about that today a bit.
I'm trying to think of things from the point of view of Major League Baseball. In your mind, like, do you think that they assume Montreal is not a major league city? I know we have the Canadiens, but then, we have the Alouettes, we have the Montreal FC soccer team. Is
so
it
again,
really...
I'm not speaking on their behalf, but since you asked me, and I think that's a very good question, because my whole philosophy is put yourself in people's shoes when you discuss with them. Don't be like, oh, I'm a fan. Okay, so I think Major League, and I'm not also slandering anybody, I'm just trying to be objective. I think Major League Baseball left Montreal with a sour taste, but more so a frustrated state, where they're like, in the end, the business community, there was nobody and I'm not blaming anybody, but nobody stepped up. So we had like one gentleman that we generally like to have a point of reference, Claude Brochu. And then there was like 11 investors, all thought they were like, and all successful people have God complexes. I say doctors have God complexes, but as they should, they save lives. But business people think they're God's gift to life. And they all thought they were like the alpha male of that group. And if you look at like what their jobs were, CEO of banks, CEOs of, major telcos, there was reason for them to be like, well, why are we being like forgotten? But so there are too many cooks in the kitchen. And in the end, it's like, as I said, new money, new terms. So when Jeffrey Loria came in, he had basically, the ability to buy out the shares of the others if they did not, meet pro rata the investment required. If there's a capital call and you don't want to invest, you dilute your stake. And I'm a finance guy as a background, so these things are very, like, I studied this. This is like, I can't put a nail in the wall. There's a lot I don't know, but the things I do know, I know pretty well. So I think they were like already with the whole baseball, they were probably a bit frustrated, and they're like, yeah. And then I'm assuming that relative to America, look at our banking sector. You could call it an oligopoly. We have 5, but they're stable, strong banks. Like I have shares in all of them probably through my professional investors. My portfolio is more tech, the areas that I know. Like I invested in NVIDIA when it was really cheap, or Roblox. Mm-hmm. So, I don't expect my pros to invest in bleeding edge tech, but I'm saying they're stable. Those are like safe investments. Whereas in the US, you have like hundreds, if not thousands of banks, and there's probably a failure and a bankruptcy every little while. In 2007 and 8, when Lehman crashed and Bear Stearns went away, that like shell shock, which actually explains the rise of private equity, because a lot of bankers were like, okay, the banks are cleaning up their portfolios. Let us go and do our own startup, set up a private equity firm to go serve that need for capital. So they probably just view, and not just them, most Americans, let me preface it by saying, even my investors, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but when I talk about l'Office de la langue française, they understand that, that they invested in a company in Montreal, but it's not fun for them. It's like added red tape. And that was really my message. My message was, I'm born in Iran, grew up in the West. I'm Canadian. I'm diplomatic. Like, we are the nice Canadians. But in business, like, yeah, I'm like American, ethical, but super competitive, super driven. Yesterday in one interview with Journal de Québec, the last question was, what do you say to those? And we can expand on this, but I do want to that's the only thing I said that I think was brash, but it was more at the end lighthearted. She's like, well, what do you say to those that like Montreal cannot compete due to currency, size of the market, the things that would weigh it down? I was like, well, you know what? Go talk to our New York and LA based competitors that WatchMojo ultimately outlasted and beat in the marketplace. I'm like, you could compete, and culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's the saying for a reason. So yeah, I think the right person and the right group and the right model can do anything. That's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of leadership and management and whatnot. So it was more like, you have this option. If you're interested in Montreal, I'm here. I'm also willing to step aside. I could facilitate. I've told a lot of the usual suspects that you would assume here. I've told them in the past. I said, I have access to a lot of investors that are looking, if you want to set up a basketball team here and you need more capital, I'm happy to facilitate. And so this, I just kind of was like, it was like a calling, if you build it, they will come. I just wanted them to know I'm here. Now I did kind of, I would love, and could talk about it, I would love for them to grant us an expansion before 2030, not just because financially the cost will go up, but because, I don't want to waste their time. And I hate saying I don't want to waste my time, because it is my responsibility to look at opportunities to grow WatchMojo and all that. But I don't want to waste anybody's time, like I don't want to take up developers' time who want to show me great land. And I certainly don't want to get fans' hope up, but at the same time, hope is really what humans need to get through life, So it's a weird thing, because I'm actually ironically a private person. I know I write a lot, but this is a bit like, people were like, we didn't even know, like they knew about WatchMojo, but they're like, we didn't even know who's this guy, So it's been weird, but servant leadership is not just hollow words, right? Like if you could help, you should help. And my thing watching the Nordiques was, Ash, 20 years ago, you said, if you why aren't these people that can help not helping? So I don't want to be a hypocrite either. It's like, it's easy to say I'm a person of principle, but then in practice, you just sit on your network and sit on your contacts and sit on your cash, which again is not billions of dollars, but it's enough to get the attention of people.
Right. So you said that you felt a little bit helpless when the team was in jeopardy in the early 2000s. How are things different now? How's the landscape different? And let me frame it this way, because I don't want to repeat too much of what we said in our previous episode reacting to the doc, but like, let's say the team never left and it was still here in 2025, but in danger. Do you think that you'd be in a better position to save a team that was on its way out today? Or do you think it would be easier to bring a team back that had left 20 years ago?
Yeah, water is wet. There's a bear shit in the woods. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the difference is, yes, 20 years ago, nobody wanted to sign a check for 185 million. Today, sports teams are worth billion plus. NHL came out and they're like the Montreal Canadiens, hats off to them. Again, Jeff Molson's done an incredible, leave this up for a second. Jeff Molson's done an incredible job with the Canadiens. They're worth $4 billion, right? So, I mean, it would be more expensive, but I also think like if there was a team, I don't think it would be in danger, because one of the main reasons at the time was this graph. If you look at MLB, 30 only, like quotation marks, this says a lot actually. Only 31% of ticket sales of revenue comes from ticket sales, which in Canada are in Canadian. National TV media rights, local TV medias, team sponsors. The pie is split up very differently.
It's more even between
it's
all
more
of these.
even, but what I see as an opportunity, where some see fear, risk, I see opportunity. You could basically grow that national TV media, local TV, and I've done millions of deals and sponsorships and partnerships and concessions. I have this vision of like this incredible, experience. I'm big in hospitality, so I think actually that's the thing. Your question is like it's like a error, because I don't think a team would be in danger, because frankly, TV rights have soared with streaming, and just even before streaming, ESPN and Fox competing, there was inflation there. So, but if there was a problem, like let's say if the same group had persevered and they're like, okay, we were individuals who invested, it's gone up now, they would probably sell it to like a media or telco or some big technology company or whatever. So they wouldn't need me, is what I'm actually realizing. Like that's
To elaborate on my question, last time we had said that if the team hadn't left in 2004, the writing was still on the wall. It would eventually happen. Like by 2010, they would have been gone. Does that mean that we've crossed over a hump now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that hump is Montreal has changed. Now, I don't think it's the government. And somebody was like, are you going to get taxpayer money? No, I think my plan is actually not to rely on taxpayer money, although I see 3 projects: franchise, stadium, and a commercial zone. The commercial zone, if they want to give benefits to, let's say, Hilton to build, like that's not me. That's not the club. That's between those parties, and I'm willing to help. But yeah, no, I think we got over a hump because the business model changed. I also think Montreal, there's a lot, there's individuals here who could write that check, but it's unreasonable to ask somebody who took a risk, became a billionaire, or like has a net worth of 10 billion and say, why don't you write a check of $2-3 billion to, they're not going to do that. So I think, yeah, we got that. You put it really well. Like, we would have gone out of business if not 204 or 210, but if we would have survived, yeah, it would be very, very different. And today, you know, the money is there. You know, there's a lot of money, but it's like not a lack of vision. I want to be very clear. It takes like, I'm a masochist, and I've said this to people. Building Watch Mojo was, having experienced it, was a tougher challenge by orders of magnitude. Like, that number is infinite plus. Because think of startup risk, financial risk, ran out of money, got sued frivolously, won. Platform risk, copyright risk, human risk, 20 years. Like, so that was so much harder. If you go to somebody and you go, it's a physical asset, a stadium, franchise, look at the historical returns. This is not easy. This is doable. The only issue is, does Major League want to come to Montreal? If they do, they know where to find me. And they could even get back to me and just say, could you please just shut up now? And we'll get back to you when the time is right. I mean, ideally, I'm like, could it be before 2030? Because then the economics change.
I'm assuming that if MLB were to be interested, that it would 100% be an expansion team, and they wouldn't be interested in moving anybody to Canada, right? Like an American team.
So, okay, again, I don't want to speak on MLB, but if we were just talking, without this opportunity or interest, exploratory process, I mean, I know that like Tampa Bay was looking for a new home and a new buyer, and they found a buyer. And my guess is they're going to want to keep it there, but then they're still going to haggle around a stadium and all that. That detail I don't know. I know that the San Diego Padres owner put them for sale, and this is not, I don't know him, so I don't doubt his sincerity, but just for PR and optics, the press release, I remember reading that we are still committed to the San Diego community. So their preference, I'm assuming, is to keep it there. Mm-hmm. And I also don't think that MLB wants to relocate teams as much as eventually do expansion, but that's their decision. I'm not going to tell them what to do, and obviously. I do think the idea is to get to 32 for scheduling and all that, and maybe like, I don't know, move a team from one division to another. But yeah, generally leagues don't like to retract or move. It's disruptive. It looks bad. Like, if you think of Gary Bettman in the NHL, like if he wants to bring back a team to Atlanta, because it's a big market or whatever, people are going to say, well, Atlanta failed twice. What's different? And what's different is the economy is different,
Mm-hmm. I was in Toronto a couple of days ago, and I went to a Lids hat store at Union Station, right downtown Toronto. And it struck me, like, knowing that we were going to be doing this podcast, I was kind of like looking around. And after the Blue Jays, the most popular hat in that place was the Montreal Expos. What does that tell you?
Yeah, I mean, when I remember, because humans take things for granted. So I remember when Snoop Dogg in one of his videos had a Montreal Canadiens jersey, it spoke to the not just the design, obviously, but just that it's a global brand. But even the Expos, and I think part of it is the loss, but there's many other reasons. But I think, I see Expos caps when I travel around the world. It's weird, but I get it. So there is nostalgia, and WatchMojo was built on nostalgia. But this is not just nostalgia. Yes, I'm a fan. Yes, I'm passionate. But as a business argument and case, it's compelling if you could get an expansion team sooner than later.
Yeah, because you don't see too many. I mean, this is a biased thing because we live where we live, but you don't see too many Atlanta Thrashers, jerseys or hats like around. But I think it's kind of a different case. Let's talk about the paradox of money, because we mentioned that is the number one thing that people point to as a huge obstacle, but you don't see it that way. But explain this paradox.
Sure. So like ultimately, like money, water, it's energy, right? So money has to flow somewhere. And the reality is there's trillions of dollars that are sitting, not in money markets, but like they're not really deployed yet. Now, some of that might be somebody raised money to go buy a health company. So, but even if you strip away all the relevant money, there's a lot of money that's been raised in specialized funds to go buy sports franchises. And again, they may not even be aware. Like there's one group that I'm trying to, like I would say, to be conservative, let's say 5 to 10 of these funds that I'm now, like before, just talk to without even naming the team, because I, at first, not with all of them, with a couple clearly I did, because that's what gave me that, oh, this is possible. But there's one that is like, just this is all they do, but they may not think of Montreal because they're not here, right? So there's all this money, and the way it works is like, yes, a portfolio manager has like their salary, but they actually get their variable compensation through a management fee, usually 2%, or carry, which is like more of a success fee. That's usually 20% of profits. Like, goes back to the limited partners, yada, yada, like the people that put in the money, and they get like a bonus of that. So investors, and it's psychology, investors want to invest, right? And investors want to invest more, not less, because the fixed cost of legal and due diligence is the same. If I buy a $5, asset or a $50 million asset, yes, the investment banks are going to charge a higher success fee as a percentage, but that fund wants to deploy more, and not because unethically just to earn their fees, but that's incentive. Greed works. That's how it resonates. So, and then ultimately, what's interesting is, let's say you are like a wealthy, high net worth individual or a family office, third generation, first generation, doesn't really matter here. You don't have an attachment to Montreal, but if there was somebody like me or somebody else, if they want to take the baton, it gives you more comfort and confidence. And like, they can invest in real estate, they can invest in the stock market, they can go buy crypto, they can do whatever they want, they can buy a rock. But opportunities to invest in sports clubs are rare. And even if somebody sets up a special purpose vehicle, an SPV, that doesn't mean that like Joe off the street or the Strasbourg family from Luxembourg can invest in them. It is like an elite, private boys and girls club, so to speak. So the money is there. Like, I would, this, but like Warren Buffett, you build your reputation over 20 years and you lose it in 5 minutes. So I would never do this if I clearly wasn't confident to have access and been told by people that I trust that if there is an opportunity, they would want to back it. Even right now, I swear on everything near and dear to me, there's a gentleman that I've actually been connected to for a very long time. And they said, we've never chatted, but we've been connected on LinkedIn. And they're like, I manage on behalf of high net worth individuals and family offices. Let me know if we should chat. I said, I sent them the link to my article about the model when there's a line item for high net worth individuals and family offices. And naturally, there's a ode to Seinfeld, because I called that person Art Vandelay, the most successful
Industries. Yeah.
The most successful latex salesman of all time.
One of the top comments that I saw on the article that you posted on X, or that was posted by the Expos account, was that would it be possible to have like a community ownership model, kind of like the Green Bay Packers have? Do you think that that's something that might be feasible?
So the truth is, for like securities law, governance, the answer, legal and diplomatic, is, let's say right now, today, just for those reasons, no. Because I also don't want somebody for PR and optics to come and be like, oh, Ash is doing this to take money from people. I don't want anybody's money in that sense. Mm-hmm. Now, it is possible, I would say, in general, ceteris paribus. Like, if some guy in Portland wanted to do that, that's their choice. Now, the league, specifically if it's an NFL team or the MLB, they would have to obviously approve it. I'm going to guess that pro sports teams today don't like that. Like Green Bay, it's folksy. Nobody's going to take away the Packers. Nobody's going to question the Packers model. So it's not like I'm trying to exclude anybody. The usual suspects, if they are like, shoot, maybe we should have replied to Ash, please do so. It's fine. You didn't, you missed the email. Like, it's fine. But it is possible, but it's not ideal. There's many other ways you could get the team to reward their fans. And I know ways to do that, but I don't think it's going to help if anybody even thinks that that is what I'm aiming here for. So no, I don't want debt. I don't want government. I mean, debt, frankly, if the private equity people want to use debt, I'm obviously not going to be against it. But I want it to be very clear that my model doesn't really require debt, doesn't require taxpayer money, and does not require or calls for, community individuals' contributions.
So what does the rollout look like? I'm assuming first order of business is ballpark.
Well, first order of business is MLB, actually.
Okay.
Nobody's like, no, I don't mean any disrespect to people. Yeah, hold it here, and then So first order is just MLB. I would give anything if MLB just gave me a signal privately. I mean, anything they tell me is confidential. And then I would actually shut up. I would actually not talk about it for a while. And I would just be like, I'll give you an update when my new overlords at Major League Baseball tell me to. Mm-hmm. I'm very coachable. I'm very easy. But yes, to create things, you don't ask for, like in general, you don't ask for permission as an entrepreneur. and it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission because nobody was like, sure, go build WatchMojo on YouTube. Like you have to put your neck out there. But so first order of business is really understanding MLB's intentions. And then, yeah, if they go, sure, in 2030, you could bid versus we're open exceptionally because we see the value of Montreal, and we could talk about that. That's really one. Then my brother-in-law, again, by luck, I was hoping for him to talk me out of it. He's like the Tom Brady in Montreal of commercial real estate. I asked him, I go, I want to describe your expertise and prowess. And I'm a big team guy. People like, I can't do anything by myself. I can't even edit a video. Sure, I'm a storyteller, I could write, but you need a team, but not too many cooks. So he's set up the offices of Ericsson, Uber, Expedia, Morgan Stanley, Google, whom I said already, TD, WB Games, EA Games. Like he's done that, like so much volume in Canada, and he's so well regarded because when I run into people in the city, when they're like, oh, he's your brother-in-law, and they're like, yeah, he's really good. He's trustworthy. He's professional. He gets things done within under budget. I mean, I saw he sent me his little thing. And so that gave me assurances because if somebody like him would have been like, nope, impossible, never going to happen. But then, yeah. And then there's like, people are like, where would it be? I mean, ideally there's an area. I mean, this is very specific for Montrealers. There's an area near the Costco, near Bridge. That is, I think, really ideal because it would be fair to everybody. It would be fair to South Shore people, Laval people, West Island people, and it would be minimal friction for downtowners because you do want corporations to feel like it's a no-brainer. Let's get season tickets for hospitality, sales, rewarding our team. More likely to get sponsorships, a lot more likely to get more people to spend time before at the concessions and at the park that I envision. So that's the ideal. Now in Montreal, we've had like an insane amount of development of condos. So I believe that land is spoken for. Again, being so transparent, I already emailed after my radio show, the company that has it. I got their email and sent them a note. And maybe they're going to think twice about condos because there's going to be a glut of condos. Like it's like Toronto, you see it now. Montreal, the same thing will happen eventually. I personally would, I'm not saying this is good for them. If they have demand for condos, build condos. Too late, but if I was an investor and somebody came, actually, let me put it to you this way, because it is my right. If somebody came to me as an investor and said, do you want to invest in this project for condos? I'd be like, yeah, I wish you luck, but I don't think the demand and supply works for me. There are other areas, people talk about Distrant, which again is like a suburb. It's a great area. I think that would be great for the people that live there, but I don't know what that does for everybody else. The whole point is I'm a big team, communal, civic guy, There's the new Royal Mount, which again could work for Laval, obviously West Island, but then you really make it harder for everybody in the South Shore, which I think is booming and growing. And and people talk about the high-speed train REM, which I've never taken just because I walk most of the time or drive to downtown, but I will take it now just to kind of get a feel for it as part of my exploratory process. So that's obviously the land, but I think Montreal has built stuff. And the thing with Montreal is, if you think about it, our soccer club, CF football, the schedule now shifted to winter. So, Saputo Stadium is a great stadium. I went to one game. Our accounting firm invited me years ago, and I had a very good time. But there's no roof, and I don't think that I'm not an engineer. I don't think that you could just add a roof on. So they're going to have a hard time, and they're going to go play some games in the Olympic Stadium. So that's not really a fun experience. Really. Yeah. And then the Alouettes, play at McGill Stadium, which is not really the caliber that you would want it for the CFL. So I don't think you could have like one stadium to serve them all. But in my head, I have this, campus compound area, which would be like this world-class sports area. And so that is definitely it. But then we're already getting ahead of ourselves. I could go on. I literally have even like the concession area. It would be like a carousel around, and it would be like Le Tour du Monde. So it'd be
let's keep getting ahead of ourselves because you've cited the Battery in Atlanta as a good example of how to develop around a baseball park. So what is it about that inspires you? Yeah,
so that was actually, again, credit where it's due. Elias told me about it. So the Battery, when I looked at it, I go, yeah, that's, they generate a ton of economic activity with, here's the website. I've gotten a lot of emails from people that develop these. It's like I'm getting a lot of emails from the people that I would love to one day work with, but I'm waiting
A
for
little
an email.
premature. Yeah.
No, I'm waiting for one email from one stakeholder that is really the only stakeholder that matters at this point. And that's fine. I understand that, I'm a nobody, and I'm not saying I'm entitled to getting a response. But if I just had any indication from those people, then we could start talking. But like during the World Series alone, the Toronto Blue Jays were so close to winning, and I wish for the city that they would have won. But I also like the Dodgers, so I mean, I would have been happy either way. But I think like they generated $100 million during the World Series, right? So I go, I'm never going to be mayor. I'm not going to be prime minister. Not that I even want to, but it's like, how can I help Montreal? Well, I like solving problems. These are, you have to be a bit of a masochist and ultimately a creative thinker and a problem solver. So the one area, it's like the two variables that I don't really control, not that I control, but that I can't with confidence. One was the construction, and my brother-in-law is the pro. And the other one is just the team, which is not in my hands. And then obviously timing, but okay, timing is timing. It's just,
I want to talk about the survey that you sent out, because you got over 3,000 responses now, and I'm sure you haven't had time to compile all the results, but have you gleaned any trends or information from that so far?
Yeah, I mean, the survey is really, really incredible. Like, I'm saying this objectively that, I've taken enough stats, and obviously I'm a finance numbers guy. That was what really pushed me over. I was like, yes, there's definitely interest. To quote Cinderella, you don't know what you got till it's gone. I think people additionally have this passion for it. You give people hope. Hope is what gets us through our lives ultimately. So the one thing I'll point to, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I would love to share it with MLB. I mean, the survey is great. Like market reports are great. Those are very valuable. As a business person, I'm not discounting them. But in the era of ChatGPT, you could generate a market report that's 80% accurate, so to speak, directionally to tell you if you should pursue it or not. It's just MLB. Do you give us the funding, and then finance, which is my wheelhouse. But the one thing that I will point to, which blew me away, was how far are you willing to travel to go watch the team? It's not. So one of the options was like over 50 kilometers, right? And blew my mind. 52% said that. So that was the majority, not a plurality, the majority. So you see, and I had emails from people. They're like, I'm in upstate New York, and they're like in Vermont. They're like, we would like, please, like we'd love this. And I don't mean any disrespect at all to. It's actually that Toronto's so big now. Rogers Media, which owns the Toronto club it's MLSE. There's a couple, but Rogers is the broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they have the rights for Canada, including Quebec, but it's like Toronto people don't care about Montreal. And that's normal. Like if you're in New York, you overlook Boston. That's maybe a good analogy for Americans, right? It's like, those Bostonians, whatever. So I don't think Rogers at the end of the day would really, I don't even know if legally they have the right, but I mean, contextually, I would just put myself in their shoes, and I already have an idea of how to give them incentives to be more open to it. Again, premature, but this is how I think. Again, there's so many things I don't know, but the things that I know, I do overthink, and I get ahead of myself sometimes, but you have to, because you have to, in life, you have to plan like 15 steps ahead and have like contingency plans for stuff. And I wish I was like this, but that's how WatchMojo survived.
Well, you're still going to get surprises either way, but at least you're a little bit more prepared.
Exactly.
So yeah, you mentioned this feeling like a civic duty. Can you elaborate a little bit on that some more?
Well, yeah, I mean, I honestly, like when I went to VidCon to speak, VidCon asked me to speak about Google for their 15-year anniversary a few years ago. And I wore like my Montreal Expos t-shirt. I mean, I could have worn the Canadians, or I had an Expos jersey. It was like the pride that we built this out of Montreal, Mm-hmm. Also, I take great pride in the jobs we've created. I take as much pride that we've never had layoffs and what all these other companies do. Entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, not the ones that become entrepreneurs like entrepreneurs or venturepreneurs that just chase profit and don't really think like it's purpose. It's like, it's like you're purpose driven. It's your default mode. And you think others are until you realize that's fine. Not everybody should be purpose, because it's good to have people that are just profit oriented, right? That's actually why I brought on investors, to balance my idealism. So I love the idea of helping Montreal. I love the idea of helping Quebec. Bolstering Canada. I mean, these are things that, frankly, I don't want people to think I'm not serious about sports. I used to play soccer.
Oh yeah.
hockey was a pretty good player. Baseball is pretty good. I was very athletic. So, I mean, I'm an athlete at heart. But my point is, I am as driven by the helping the citizens. And, again, I don't want taxpayer money. But I like the idea of creating jobs. And we have a housing issue. We'll build apartments there. And there will be a lot of jobs created. And in my model, again, really getting ahead, it wouldn't just be that it's summer when the Expos are there and then it's dead. I've talked about the academy, which is like a school for entrepreneurship. I want to put it there then, otherwise I would put it somewhere that would be maybe closer to me, so to speak, downtown. But I would put it there. And I would actually I would go up to all the like categories, hotels, and run a mini auction and say, if you want to put a hotel here, what works, what's win-win, and many other things. There's so much that the city needs, and this would help it. And I don't need taxpayers' money because I don't think that's fair or right. But when you see hospitals' budgets being cut and schools being, and again, it's like a weird thing where the things that are seen as negatives in Montreal, here you can leverage them as strengths. So that's the best outcomes.
What do you say to the doubters who think that it's impossible, it'll never happen, there's too many boundaries to overcome?
I mean, I'm somebody that faced that for like 20 years out of the 20 years of WatchMojo, but like it was like, hey, good luck with that business, pal. Then I was like, I always believed in you, buddy, right? The people that said, hey, you're not in New York and LA. Well, how are those companies doing, my friend? So that's fine. But what I actually do is, I'm a masochist and I like criticism. Because with criticism, you can improve. Ideally, it's constructive and it's respectful. But even like the snarky stuff, there's usually 1% of utility in it. So I'm like, why? What is your obstacle, right? So if somebody is like an expert in construction, like my brother-in-law, he goes, yeah, it's not going to work, I would really listen to that. I'm not going to jump off a bridge. But a lot of it, I think, is being jaded. A lot of it is, getting burnt. It's also, I'll just be very respectful. It's like, imagine if I tell a doctor something's not possible medically, and I'm not a doctor. So as a finance guy, especially for a year, I've been hearing institutional investors in my ear saying bigger. They're like, let's say, this is all written about this. In our M&A process, and so transparent, like our investor's been in our company for 5 years. They're not in a rush. They're like, we're long-term. But I know that cycles come and go. So right now, everybody wants to be on YouTube. Everybody wants to have more exposure on Google. I told them, I said, I don't ever want to sell. I love my job. But I respect that you do need liquidity at some point. You need to reward your investors, and you just don't want to be, you don't want to be here in perpetuity. That's nothing to do with us. So I was like, let's run a process. So in that process, let's say literally we had like 10 interested people at like 5-10 offers. And I'm narrowing down which one to pick. Some of them want just us to do the same. Some of them want us to go big and some really big. So for a year, I've had all these people in my ear asking for the bigger and bigger ideas so they could deploy more capital, so they could justify the investment of time, really, and energy, not even money. So I'm like, okay, the money is here, but if I decide to go with a party that doesn't care about it, well, there goes WatchMojo. And then at least I tried. I'm not a sellout. I said 20 years ago, I would keep my word. Voila.
What would you say to people who accuse you of just deploying this as a marketing gimmick?
So one guy did this. I was at the hockey match yesterday, and I was like, I'm about to go, but I'm going to answer this. So I'm like, look, WatchMojo is a very big platform. If like it doesn't just common sense, like it's a drop in the bucket, and it's not even like people coming are going to start watching our video. Like it's just that's ridiculous. I go, there are fair. I joked this morning. I go, really, you could argue that this was just a ruse for me to improve mon français. I'm perfectly bilingual, but if you don't practice, you lose it. Like my peak French speaking skills was when I was doing customer service for Royal Bank. We got all the French calls. So I spoke like super good. I mean, I still speak fine, but it's not as polished as my English. But that was a joke. I think for me, the only selfish thing is that in the end, I do have to make not just the principle, that's the foundation, but the added thing is eventually we're going to have to decide. We could do nothing because we're profitable, generating cash in the bank, no debt. So there's no rush, but the right thing to do is to find like a new chapter. I like new challenges, right? So if I go with a group that goes, yeah, like WatchMojo, we don't want any involvement. Whereas I think any sports league would love a WatchMojo involved because we give them a window to, WatchMojo Espanol has 9 million subscribers. So if like you want to eventually have a team in Mexico City, could you imagine if like Mexico City, they start to kind of, because we promote them, not just baseball, but they start to have like a interest in maybe the Expos, but like just anybody. Well, then that makes you landing in Mexico City a lot more easy and eventually more successful. And we have like, channels in Mandarin, Japanese, Indonesia. We have a WatchMojo Indonesia channel. At one point, we had WatchMojo Myanmar, WatchMojo Maori for New Zealand, right? I mean, that's really valuable. And also, did I mention what the incentive is to try to sway MLB?
No.
Okay. So this morning when I was driving to one of the interviews, because I was like, put yourself in your shoes. They want you to shut up. They want you to just go away, probably. Like, not that, like, I'm obviously being self-deprecating, but what I mean is the timing. I think just like they would love to have me with this passion in a few years, but then I won't be there. Like we'll probably WatchMojo will be some logo on some big conglomerate's website, and nobody's going to do that. But I was like, okay, if I'm them and I give them like, not in cash, I don't want to, but like as a notional amount, like barter, imagine we give them $100 million worth of marketing value over the next 4 years. So I'll build you a plan where tell me what your priorities are. Our team will build you a 4-year, $100 million marketing package. You want me to promote anything? Done. You want any charitable cause? Done. Your neighbor needs a lift? I'll drive them. Your niece needs an internship? Done. But imagine we promote you, and we're good enough for Disney, HBO, Paramount, Visa, Geico. I could go on, but imagine and also we localize and internationalize MLB. So everybody around the world. And if you think about it, what did Shohei Ohtani do? Baseball was huge in Japan, but and before him, Suzuki and many others. I'm like, maybe that'll matter. I don't want to name it because of confidentiality reasons. I'm only doing this because in the past I've convinced equally important, powerful, conservative, but still entities to consider things. And I would say my batting average, because I only ask it when I feel like reasonable and I have an argument and it's not like emotional or whatever. As I said, I've accomplished things that are so much harder. This is hard, but it's somewhere between improbable and impossible, which is what Jeffrey Katzenberg told me when I had breakfast with him. And I loved it and it stuck with me. And I don't know if he coined it, I doubt it, and he's obviously the K in SKG DreamWorks. So we'll see. But I mean, they could be like, that's not a bad idea. Like, you give us all this marketing for free, but it's valued and we would itemize it. I mean, what would you do if you're like the commissioner's office? Is that crazy? Would you consider it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it remains to be seen.
It remains to be seen, yeah.
Were you, as a final question, were you surprised by the kind of enthusiastic response to the poll, or did you believe that there was so much goodwill and enthusiasm, or was it surprising to you that there was such a reaction?
I was shocked because Michael Milken, the most successful investor, is a social scientist. When I used to drive around in after they left in the 2000s, and I would see, hey, there used to be a baseball diamond. Now there's a soccer pitch. I really assumed that there was no interest or that it had really dissipated. But what I now see is the whole Cinderella song, don't know what you got till it's gone, or the saying. I do see that there's like orders of magnitude, not like, oh, there's 20% more interest than I thought. Like, I would say, if I had to quantify it, I would say 200 to 500% more interest positive than I thought. And even the media reaction, again, I'm available. I'm not special there. I'm like, I don't talk to anybody. Anybody that asked for media, I gave them. I said, no problem. I was largely, it was funny. Yesterday I had meetings. I was doing things. I closed a couple of deals for the company, but I was running around from one place to the other. But I was also really surprised pleasantly by the media interest, which I do want MLB, if I may send this to them, in a shorter interview I did with Elias, which is like, here's the short version, but you may want to just hear my voice to understand where I'm coming from. I was blown away. And I do think it's really because Toronto deserves it. Toronto, the Blue Jays are blamed by a lot of people. And I saw in the feedback for like blocking this and that. And I don't know. I don't think Rogers is this evil, or MLSE is this evil thing that was like, by the way, remind me to say an anecdotal thing about my phone. Sure. I will get close on that. So I don't think Rogers had this like evil plan. Maybe I'm just naive to like block the Devil Rays from coming to Montreal. Maybe they were like, well, we're not sure we want to split the market yet until it's like expansion where we're getting a portion pro rata of the fee. And that's actually logically when I think about it, because yeah, they would be maybe fine with Montreal if it was an expansion, because then they're getting paid. That's what the money's for, as Don Draper says. I think it was probably the players that were like, okay, like we don't really want to split the season in two. And then whatever else was like not on the side of yes, then that got squashed. But I do think though that I hope if ever the Expos come back, the Expos and the Montreal community says like, hey, Toronto helped with the Jays run. Because I do think I heard that a lot. Like people were like seeing the Jays, like we want to experience that. And this morning, actually, a radio station from Toronto, it was a former Montrealer, John Moore, who's there now. He asked, and I said, sure. I didn't even know he was in, I thought it was a Montreal one, but then this morning I saw Toronto because yesterday was a blur. And, I wanted to be very cordial, and I only did it. I actually want to limit media to Montreal. I don't want to do like, I could go do a New York station if I wanted to, but unless I would think about it. I don't want to say no, but I would probably not, that we're not there yet. But I did want like, hopefully the folks at those companies to see where I'm coming from. And I do think that would grow the pie. Because I know Toronto. I mean, when we speak to Toronto-based companies, they don't care about Montreal. They don't need Montreal. Same ways when I went to China, I would ask those entrepreneurs and executives, I go, why don't you guys like do more in abroad? And they were like, oh, China's huge. We don't need America. And it's interesting to hear that perspective, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we also have a presence in China, if MLB's listening, So what's funny is, how long have you had your phone? Not your phone physically, your phone number, but I mean, not the number, because I know now you could change it.
Oh, like but I've had my contract. Well, yeah. I just signed with a new company a year and a half ago. So it's recent. Yeah.
How long do you think I've had my number?
I don't know. I would guess as long as you've had a phone, maybe.
Yeah. Like, have you had 2000?
Okay.
And it's been with the same company, Rogers, and it's the only account I have with Rogers. I have a ton of stuff with Videotron, ton of stuff with myself and the company. With Bell, it's the only thing I have. So at some point, I'm probably going to, in my exploratory process, send an email to the CEO of Rogers. And they took a look at us, but they moved away more from media to double down on sports, and it paid off. Bell was the company we were closer to, and I'd love to be a fly in the wall if like one of my contacts is like, I got this email from Ash. Like, what the hell does this mean?
Well, my cell phone contract is with Bell, so I'll hit up Bell, you hit up Rogers, and we'll
No,
have.
but the thing is, I do want to go. I want to be like, I'm a Rogers customer. This is a customer service inquiry. I'm like, I want to know if I should keep this or not. I'm kidding. Give them more reason to think I'm a crazy person. I'm not crazy, I swear. Anyway, look. It's doable. It really starts and ends with MLB. I also want the fans to know it's not the money, it's not the stadium. Even if we can't get that lot of land, there'll be places. Montreal as an island is 10 times bigger than Manhattan. We're not going to go. Oh, and also, in case you're wondering, not the Olympic Stadium. Not even one game.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would suggest the Olympic
Stadium. I would never have the comfort to tell an investor that and trust their faith in me. We'll start there. Oublie ça. Zero, full stop. So but again, it's really just MLB. So the sooner they let me know if I'm wasting everybody's time, I would appreciate it. But maybe they're actually considering it.
Well, I hope you hear back from them soon. This has got a lot of people exciting, myself included. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this develops.
I did not, I swear on anything. This was obviously not it. But remember when I told you, just because I'm accountable to you and everybody. So I came to you and I said, hey, I'm sorry. I know we haven't finished the documentary. I told the group that would work on that. And I said, it's all there in my head, but I go, I don't want to finish it. I don't want to publish it yet on 20 years of YouTube, 20 years of WatchMojo, Just Watch. Because I said, I feel like the last scenes and the chapter remains TBD.
No, well, I think we might be hitting that point right now. So hopefully we'll see what happens. It's always great talking with you, Ash. I don't know what next week is going to bring. Well, it's also TBD.
It's just some sleep and some rest. This is me at my lowest energy point, by the way, but it's been an intense couple days.
I understand. Yep.
All right.
We'll
Thank you all.
talk about something you're obviously passionate about. So it
Yep.
came across really well.
Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Take it easy, Ash. Bye, everybody.